For every quiet soul who was overshadowed in the noise, for every dreamer whose ideas were stolen and whose voice was dismissed, this story is for you. The office had gone quiet for the night, leaving behind only the soft hum of the building's air conditioning. My cubicle was a small pool of yellow light, a lonely island in a sea of darkness. I sat hunched over my desk, eyes stinging from the strain of hours spent adjusting fonts and refining data points. My fingers hovered above the trackpad, trembling with a cocktail of fatigue and anticipation. Tomorrow's presentation would be the culmination of weeks of solitary work. Every projection, every careful word chosen to defend my vision. I leaned back in my chair, rolling my shoulders to ease the ache. In the reflective surface of the window, I caught my own gaze, tired, resolute. My reflection looked as though it belonged to someone else, someone who still believed that honest work would speak for itself. The door clicked open behind me, and I turned to see Ji-Yun's silhouette framed in the doorway. Her tailored jacket, cream silk blouse, and gentle smile looked effortless, the picture of polite confidence. She stepped inside, the scent of her floral perfume lingering in the air, her heels quiet on the carpet. "Seijin," she said, her tone so warm it almost stung. "You're still here, burning the midnight oil, I see." My throat tightened. I forced a smile that felt foreign on my lips. I wanted to be sure everything was perfect for tomorrow. She tilted her head, her dark hair slipping over her shoulder like ink, her eyes flickering to the open laptop. "Perfection is your trademark, isn't it?" She walked closer, her expression shifting, smile softening, eyes narrowing as she leaned one hand on my desk. "Let's brainstorm together, Seijin. 2 heads are better than 1. Her voice was a velvet glove, wrapping itself around the quiet dread inside me. I hesitated, fingers curling over the edge of my notebook. My instinct was to protect, to clutch my work close to my chest like a secret, but her tone was so disarmingly kind. She had always been this way, half friend, half thief. A gentle hand reaching out while the other slipped the prize from your grasp. "Of course," I murmured, though something in my chest felt cold and heavy. "Collaboration is important." She leaned over the screen, her scent filling the small space. I could feel the soft brush of her hair against my cheek as she scanned the slides, her lips parting slightly in feigned interest. My heart beat faster, a silent drum echoing in my ribs. "These are impressive," she said, her fingers brushing the trackpad as if it were her own. "You always have such a clear way of presenting data." I wanted to pull the laptop away, to shield my words from her hungry eyes. Instead, I nodded and let her scroll, each flick of her finger a violation I pretended not to see. In that moment, I was painfully aware of my own fragility, my need to be seen, to be acknowledged, twisting itself into a weapon she could wield against me. She left me there with a gentle smile and a promise to review everything together. The click of the door closing behind her was the softest sound, yet it thundered in my ears. The next morning arrived with a dawn that felt both fragile and bright. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked calm, my hair neatly pinned, my lipstick precise, but the storm inside me had already begun to gather. The boardroom was a cavern of glass and steel, polished to gleaming indifference. I took my seat near the end of the long table, my slides carefully stacked in front of me. Ji-Yeon sat closer to the head, her expression serene, a gentle smile fixed in place as she exchanged pleasantries with the CEO and the senior partners. My hands were cold, hidden beneath the table as I traced the edge of my notes, grounding myself in the quiet repetition. My pulse thudded at my temple. This was my work, my vision, my heart carved into bullet points and market projections. When Ji-Yeon stood, the room shifted its attention like a tide drawn to the moon. She held herself with practiced grace, her blouse crisp, her voice a calm melody as she began to speak. "Thank you all for gathering today. I'm pleased to present our growth strategy for the next quarter, one that promises unprecedented returns." I blinked, once, twice. My breath caught in my chest as she clicked through the slides I had spent countless nights perfecting. Each chart, each polished phrase, my words, stolen from the quiet hours of my life and reborn in her mouth. The board nodded along, approving murmurs rising like a wave that threatened to drown me. She spoke with the easy cadence of someone who had rehearsed every syllable, her hand gesturing toward the graphs with confident authority. I watched her lips move, each word a betrayal, delivered with a smile. Took everything. She took it all, and no one sees. My throat felt dry as I forced a polite smile, the kind you wear at funerals. Applause broke out as she concluded, a crisp staccato that rang in my ears, my fingers twisted in my lap, nails biting into my palm. Excellent presentation, Yi Hyun, such clarity in market analysis, one of the partners said, his voice rich with admiration. Yen bowed her head slightly, her expression demure. Thank you. I just thought clarity would help us move forward. I felt the sting of it, how she wore my words like a tailored suit, each phrase fitting her perfectly because I had stitched it myself. My eyes flicked to her, catching the quick gleam in her gaze as she sat down, as if she could feel my silent fury pulsing through the air. The meeting ended in a blur of handshakes and polite laughter. I rose from my chair, my legs stiff, my face still composed even as my insides churned. My body moved through the motions, gathering my notes, offering small nods of agreement, while my mind screamed in a language only I could hear. In the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their glow cold and impersonal. I could see Jian laughing softly with the senior director, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She caught my gaze over his shoulder and offered a small wink, a silent mockery of everything I had lost. I turned away before she could see the burn of betrayal in my eyes. The stairwell was deserted, the air cooler here, the metal railing beneath my hand an anchor in the storm. I stood there for a long moment, my breath ragged in the quiet. The city outside the window was a blur of lights and movement, indifferent to my humiliation. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal, letting the chill seep into my skin. My reflection in the window was shadowed, my eyes hollow with the weight of everything I had swallowed. This ends here. The words were soft, a whisper in the dark, but they were the truest thing I had ever spoken. My fingers tightened around the railing until the pain in my knuckles became a promise. I would not be her shadow anymore. I left the stairwell with the cold of the metal railing still lingering in my bones, my mind a quiet furnace of resolve. The echoes of Ji-yeon's betrayal had settled into a silence that felt heavier than any argument. In that hush, something shifted. My anger refined itself, no longer wild, but precise. I began to see the office not as a place of work, but as a living game board, each person a piece, every whispered conversation a move. The morning light spilled across the polished floors as I walked down the hallway, my reflection in the glass doors catching my sharp gaze. My lips curved faintly, a mirror of the smile I wore in front of others. Underneath it pulsed the quiet knowledge that I would not play this game as a pawn anymore. I slipped into the break room, the scent of bitter coffee mingling with faint perfume and cologne. Ji-yeon stood by the counter, her hair artfully tousled, her silk blouse a perfect balance of elegance and authority. She was laughing, her hand brushing the arm of a senior associate in a gesture that seemed casual, yet rehearsed. It's so stressful leading a team, you know? So many moving parts, she said, her voice a gentle confession that drew sympathetic nods. I poured myself a cup of tea, letting the steam cloud the edges of my vision. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, its recording app a silent witness to every word she spoke. I offered her a polite nod, my face calm. Of course. Must be so much pressure, I murmured, my tone light, though inside my thoughts moved like a blade through silk. Her words dripped with carefully measured vulnerability, another trick to disarm and draw others in. I saw it now, each flick of her lashes, every tilt of her head, a performance honed over years. I let you take the credit once, never again. I watched the others around her, their faces bright with easy trust. Each one a potential resource she could bend to her advantage. My hands closed around the paper cup, feeling the heat of it as if it could ground me. In the days that followed, I turned my attention outward, peeling back the thin veneer of smiles and small talk that filled the office. The overhead lights flickered above my head as I leaned against a cool marble wall, phone screen dimly lit in my hand, always recording. My ears tuned to the soft cadence of conversations in the hallways, the pause before a name was spoken, the nervous laughter that hinted at secrets. Jianyan moved through these spaces like a dancer, her movements fluid and poised. She offered compliments that were as sharp as they were sweet, each one crafted to plant the seed of loyalty in whoever heard them. Her fingertips brushed lightly over shoulders, her lips curving in sympathy as she shared tales of her own supposed struggles. I saw through it all, how her kindness was a currency she spent with careful deliberation. My desk became a fortress of observation. I opened my laptop to spreadsheets and slides, but my real work was in the notes I kept hidden in a locked file. Each whisper she offered me in confidence, every glance that lingered too long at a meeting, became a line of data. My phone was never far from my hand, its tiny red light a silent promise that her words would never vanish. I don't need to fight yet. First, I'll see how far her greed goes. I moved through the office with the same quiet diligence I always had, but now there was an edge to my steps, a steadiness that had been missing before. When Jiyeon leaned against my desk, her fingers brushing the edge of my keyboard as she asked, "What are you working on today, Sejin?" I smiled and tilted the screen slightly away, the motion smooth and controlled. "Just refining some numbers. I know how much you value accuracy," I replied, letting the words fall between us like a stone in water. Her eyes flickered, a shadow of curiosity passing over her calm expression before she smiled again, the picture of gracious interest. "Of course. Accuracy is everything," she said, her tone light and warm. I watched the way her lips curved, the slight tension in her shoulders that betrayed her curiosity. She didn't realize I had begun to see through her charm, how every compliment was a mirror held up to hide her own ambition. I let her think I was still the same quiet girl who wanted nothing more than to please, even as my phone captured each exchange, each hushed conversation in the corner of the break room. The days grew colder as autumn bled into winter, the city outside the office turning silver under frost. The windows fogged in the early mornings, and I found solace in the rhythm of my own quiet war. Each day I dressed with deliberate care, subtle blouses that spoke of restraint, skirts that brushed the edge of power without ever flaunting it. My hair, pinned back in a simple twist, left my face open and unguarded, a canvas of quiet determination. I began to see how the office was alive with unspoken alliances, how each nod of agreement in a meeting was a dance of power and ambition. Jiyeon was the center of it all, her laughter a ribbon that wove around the hearts of those who wanted to be seen. I let her think she still held that power, even as I slowly unraveled her hold on me. One late afternoon, as the sky outside turned the color of bruised violets, I stood in the shadowed hallway near the break room. My phone sat in my palm, screen flickering like a heartbeat as I pressed record. Ji-Yen was inside, her voice soft and coaxing as she spoke to one of the junior managers. "I know how it feels to be overlooked," she said, her tone intimate. "You're so talented, and yet it's like they never see you." I heard the longing in the manager's voice as he murmured back, eager for her approval. My lips curved faintly, though the humor in it tasted of iron. "She doesn't see me anymore as someone to fear. She thinks I'm hers to mold. Let her keep believing it." The office lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the floor. My reflection in the glass was pale and unwavering, my phone a small red eye that glowed with quiet promise. I slipped it back into my pocket as Chio-yen's laughter floated down the hallway, sweet as sugar and twice as dangerous. I turned and walked away, my footsteps soft, my resolve a quiet drumbeat in my veins. Each day I gathered her words like pearls, stringing them together in a necklace of quiet evidence. I didn't need to confront her yet. My power was in the patience I had learned to wield, the calm mask I wore as I watched her spin her web. As the days blurred into weeks, I began to feel a stillness settle into my bones, a clarity that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I was no longer prey. I was a shadow in the corners of her empire, a quiet witness to her thefts and half-truths. And in that stillness, I found a new voice inside me, one that was done with fear, one that waited, deliberate and cold, for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. I let the silence stretch around me as I walked back to my desk, the weight of my phone in my pocket a silent vow. The overhead lights flickered once, casting the hallway in momentary darkness. When they brightened again, I lifted my chin and met my own gaze in the glass. For now, I keep my mask on. For now. The promise in those words was the final note in the song that played in my head, a soft, lethal melody that would guide me through the coming storm. The silence of my observation had become a second skin, its weight familiar and comforting. I moved through the office with a measured calm, each step a deliberate echo of the resolve that had taken root in my chest. My mask was seamless now, each smile a perfect replica of the one I used to wear when I believed kindness was enough. I saw her across the conference table during morning briefings, her posture elegant and relaxed, a silk blouse in soft ivory that glowed in the harsh white light, her lips curved in a gentle smile as she spoke to the team, voice threaded with that same honeyed reassurance that had always fooled me. "Let's hear from everyone. No idea is too small," she said, her tone coaxing, bright eyes sweeping the room with a warm invitation. I watched the way her gaze lingered on me, how her expression softened just enough to seem sincere. My fingers brushed the edge of my notebook, each word I had written down there more precious to me than the approval in her voice. Her eyes flickered, zeroing in on the hesitation she saw in my expression. "Don't be shy, Seijin," she said, leaning in closer, her hand resting lightly on the back of the chair beside her. "You always have such innovative thoughts." Her compliment slid over me like a silk scarf. Soft, luxurious, but meant to bind. My lips curved into a polite smile that never touched my eyes. She doesn't want my ideas, she wants my silence. I felt the weight of the others' gazes, their polite curiosity and the silent plea that I would fill the space she had carved out for me. I inclined my head slightly, offering a small suggestion, one that was careful and measured, a polished surface that concealed the true depth of my plans. Jo Yun's expression brightened, her teeth a flash of white as she nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly what I was hoping to hear," she said, her tone warm. Her praise was a leash, tightening around the room as the others nodded in agreement. She always found a way to make herself the center, each idea another gem she added to her crown of borrowed brilliance. In the break room later that morning, I watched as she pressed her shoulder lightly against a junior associate's arm, her laughter a soft ripple that made him lean in closer, as if her nearness were a secret he wanted to keep. "It's so much pressure, you know?" she said, her voice low and intimate. "Leading a team, balancing expectations. Sometimes I wish I could be more like you. Quiet, focused, undistracted." Her words were a gentle confession that drew a flush of sympathy to his cheeks. I saw the way his shoulders straightened, how he leaned in as if he could catch her vulnerability in the air and keep it safe. She's never vulnerable. She's a collector of other people's doubts, turning them into stepping stones beneath her feet. I stood at the edge of the room, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold, the steam long since vanished. My phone was in my pocket, recording her voice as she wove her stories. Each word was another thread I would gather and tie into a noose of evidence. In the afternoon light, she moved through the hallways like a queen, her heels clicking softly against the marble floors. She paused to offer a compliment here, a soft word of encouragement there, every gesture measured, each one a brick in the empire she was building on stolen foundations. During lunch, she sat across from me at a small table in the corner of the cafeteria, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup as she shared a story that felt rehearsed. "My parents always expected so much," she said, her voice trembling in a way that was too precise to be accidental. "It was overwhelming at times. You understand, don't you? Always feeling like you're not quite enough for the people who matter." Her eyes glistened with carefully summoned tears, the light catching the moisture like tiny shards of glass. I watched her, my spoon motionless above my bowl of rice, my heart an immovable stone in my chest. "Save your tears, Juyun. They're only currency to you." I tilted my head, letting my expression soften into something that looked like understanding. "I know how that feels," I said, though the truth of my words was carved in silence, not shared vulnerability. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine, the touch light and practiced. "We're so much alike," she whispered, her smile small and intimate. "I've always felt that with you." I let her hand linger for a moment, felt the gentle pressure of her touch, a touch that was meant to make me forget the taste of betrayal on my tongue. Then I withdrew, slow and measured, letting the silence stretch between us like a promise. We're nothing alike. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of meetings and small tasks, the office a theater of polite ambition. I watched her from the edges, saw the way her eyes flickered to every new idea offered in the meeting room, how her smile never wavered as she claimed them as her own. She was a master of the small nod, the encouraging glance, weaving the illusion of collaboration while she gathered the pieces of everyone else's work. I saw her glance at me more than once, her smile always soft, always warm. I returned it with the same quiet poise, though beneath my calm mask a new clarity burned bright and sharp. She didn't see me as a threat. To her, I was still the girl who would smile and nod, who would watch her take everything and say nothing. My silence was the armor she thought she had forged for me, the role she believed I would play until the end. Let her think it. Let her believe that I am still hers to control. The sun had begun to sink behind the city skyline when she stopped by my desk once more, her hair falling forward as she leaned in to whisper, "I heard the partners were impressed by your insight this morning," she said, her breath warm against my ear. "You always know how to see the angles others miss." Her compliment was a blade wrapped in velvet, each word meant to cut and soothe in equal measure. I met her gaze, the soft light of the desk lamp casting half her face in shadow. "Thank you," I replied softly, letting the words linger like a half-formed promise. My fingers brushed against the edge of my phone in my pocket, its weight a silent reminder that everything she gave me would be mine to keep. Every lie, every false kindness. As she walked away, her silhouette framed by the fading light of the office, I let my lips curl into a smile that was mine alone. The game was still hers to play, she thought, but I was no longer her silent shadow. My eyes followed her as she disappeared around the corner, and in that soft golden silence, a single thought beat steady in my chest. I will not let you steal from me again. The words settled into the quiet like a vow, the last note of a promise that would not be broken. The promise I made to myself at the end of the last meeting had settled into my bones, a silent hymn echoing beneath the surface of my polite composure. Each smile I offered in the days that followed was measured, a reflection of the calm I had cultivated. My footsteps carried me through the office with a new steadiness, each one guided by a singular purpose, to turn Ye Yen's greed against a... The nights grew longer as winter approached, the city beyond the office windows wrapped in a shroud of frost and shadow. I stayed late under the fluorescent lights, the hum of the building around me a quiet symphony of solitude. My desk was a pool of warm lamplight, papers spread like a fan of cards in front of me, each one a piece of the trap I was weaving. I opened a new project file, the cursor blinking on the blank screen with quiet insistence. My fingers hovered above the keys, then began to type with a deliberate slowness. Each slide was a careful promise, a vision of growth so compelling that even the most discerning eye would be drawn in. I worked with a devotion that was almost reverent, crafting every line to be the perfect blend of precision and seduction. The opening slides gleamed like polished glass. Market analysis, growth charts, projections that sang with the soft, irresistible glow of possibility. I let the numbers flow with a rhythm that felt hypnotic, each one a step deeper into the web I was spinning. When I finished, I sat back in my chair and let my eyes drift across the screen, the words shimmering under the soft glow of the desk lamp. Polish the opening, poison the heart. The thought was a quiet thrill that made the corners of my lips lift, though my reflection in the darkened window was as still as a ghost. I leaned forward again, my fingers moving with a new precision as I wove the flaws into the data, small contradictions that would blossom into ruin when exposed to the light of scrutiny, figures that seemed sound at first glance but would fracture under the weight of careful analysis. I saved the file, my hands steady, my breath slow. My heart beat a steady rhythm beneath the calm surface, each beat a reminder of what I had become. Not prey, not a pawn, but the hand that would guide the final move. I reached into the drawer beside me, pulling out the red folder I had saved for this moment. Its color was rich and deep, the kind that drew the eye and refused to let it go. I pressed it against the file, taping it in place like a final silent dare. The bright slash of red against the clean white paper was a warning no predator could resist. I looked at the folder for a long moment, the memory of Zhu bright eyes and honeyed voice lingering in the quiet. My fingers traced the edge of the paper, each line a promise she had broken, each whisper a thread she had twisted around my throat. The memory of her soft laughter and feigned tears was nothing more than a brittle shell now, and I felt no fear as I pressed the final slide into place. Prepared by Sai Jin, I typed in a small, discreet font at the bottom corner, a signature she would never think to erase. The words were almost invisible at first glance, a quiet echo of everything she had stolen. I uploaded the file to the shared drive, my pulse a steady drumbeat in my throat. The icon appeared under the project list, a small and unassuming presence in the sea of data. My cursor hovered over the security settings for a moment, then drifted away, leaving the file open and unguarded. I leaned back in my chair, the red folder catching the light like a flare in the dark. My reflection in the window was calm and deliberate, my eyes bright with the promise of the reckoning I had crafted. She'll think she's stealing my best work. Let her. The next morning, I watched her from across the room as she walked in, her heels silent on the carpet, her hair glinting in the soft morning light. She moved through the office like she owned it, her eyes bright with that same easy confidence, her smile gentle as she greeted each person she passed. Saw the moment her gaze flickered to the shared drive, the small furrow of curiosity in her brow as she leaned closer to her screen. Her lips curved faintly, her breath catching in a soft, almost reverent sigh. "Perfect. Mine now," she whispered, the words a caress that I could almost feel across the distance between us. She moved quickly after that, her fingers deft on the keyboard as she downloaded the file. I watched her from the corner of my eye, my own expression impassive, though my heart sang with a dark, quiet triumph. Her posture was relaxed, her head tilted slightly as she read through the opening slides, her smile growing with each carefully crafted phrase. But she sees only what she wants to see. I returned to my own desk, my phone resting in my palm like a talisman. The screen was black, its weight a silent comfort as I slid it back into my pocket. My work was done, the snare was set, and all that remained was the patient waiting. The day moved around me in soft waves of conversation and muted footsteps, the office a stage of careful performances. Jeon's laughter floated above the clink of coffee cups, sweet and practiced as she charmed the senior associates. Her eyes met mine across the room, and for a moment I saw the flash of satisfaction there, a glimmer of triumph she thought she had earned. I let my lips curve in a small smile, a silent answer that she would not understand until it was too late. The red folder in her hand was a banner she wore proudly, oblivious to the blade hidden in its folds. I watched her carry it like a prize, her shoulders straight, her stride confident as she moved through the office with the file tucked beneath her arm. Let her think she's won. As the sun dipped low in the sky, the light slanting through the windows in warm, golden bars, I stood by the window and let the quiet fill me. The city stretched out below, the traffic a river of white and red lights that pulsed with steady rhythm. My reflection in the glass was calm, my eyes steady as I traced the lines of my own face. In the stillness, I felt the weight of everything I had learned, every lie she had told me, every word she had stolen. The taste of betrayal had long since turned to iron on my tongue, and in its place was something colder, sharper, a promise that I would see this through to the end. She thinks she's taken everything from me. She doesn't know how much I have left. The office door closed softly behind me as I stepped away from the window, the sound a final note in the quiet song I had composed. My footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one a steady drumbeat that carried me forward. The trap was set, and the game had shifted. My breath was steady, my smile small and quiet as I turned the corner and vanished into the soft, humming silence of the night. The morning of the project reveal dawned sharp and clear, the winter light gilding the skyline in fragile silver. I woke before dawn, the city's muted hush matching the quiet storm that pulsed steady in my chest. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was calm, the soft line of my mouth unmoved as I traced my lipstick across parted lips. My hair was a dark river of silk pinned back with careful precision, my blouse a simple ivory that caught the light like a promise of poise. The boardroom was already half filled when I arrived, the air electric with anticipation and the muted click of polished shoes on marble. I took my seat at the long table, my back straight, fingers resting lightly on the folder I had brought. Across the table, Jion sat radiant in a tailored navy dress, her lips painted in a color too rich to be innocence. She greeted the board with a warm smile, her eyes bright with the thrill of the stage she believed was hers alone. I watched her in silence, the memory of her soft laugh and lingering touch at the coffee machine a ghost at the edge of my thoughts. She was the same woman who had taken every idea I had offered, repackaging them in her voice, her perfect posture. Her smile today was a knife's edge, soft and sharp all at once. She rose from her chair, the red folder tucked beneath her arm like a prize she had earned. The color caught the morning light, a streak of defiance in the soft palette of the room. My eyes followed its curve, the symbolism coiled tight in my chest. A warning she had never learned to heed. "Thank you all for joining us," Jion began, her voice a warm, practiced melody. She glanced around the room, her gaze sweeping over each face, pausing on me for the briefest flicker of a second. I inclined my head in a gesture of polite neutrality, though inside, my pulse was a quiet drumbeat, each beat a step closer to the moment she would fall. She launched into the presentation with the same practiced ease she wore like perfume. The opening slides glowed on the screen behind her, each one a testament to the hours I had spent crafting them, each number and projection a song she could only mimic, never truly own. "As you can see," she said, her voice warm and honeyed, "our market share will double within 6 months. Our data shows an unprecedented rise in customer acquisition and retention." She spoke with absolute confidence, her eyes gleaming as she gestured to the elegant graphs that shifted on the screen, a dance of color and possibility. Around me, the board members nodded, their faces bright with cautious optimism. The weight of their attention pressed against the room's silence. Each word she spoke, drawing them closer to her web. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, my breath measured. My heart did not race, my lips curved faintly as I let the silence gather around her, each moment another step deeper into the trap I had laid. A senior partner leaned forward, his brows lifted in faint surprise. "These figures are extraordinary," he said, the compliment heavy in the hush that followed. Jion's smile deepened, her fingers brushing the edge of the red folder, like a lover's caress. "I'm glad you see the potential," she replied, her voice smooth as glass. "We believe this is the key to our growth in the new year." The room felt suspended in that moment, the soft whir of the projector filling the quiet between her words. My eyes never left her, watching the faint tremor in her fingers, the small shift of her weight that spoke of the tension beneath her practiced poise. Then the board member's voice cut through the reverent hush. "Wait," he said, his tone shifting, a note of confusion threading through his words. "These projections, they contradict each other." The silence that followed was a chasm, a sharp intake of breath that echoed in the stillness. Ji-eon's smile faltered for the first time, her fingers tightening around a folder as if she could anchor herself to its bright promise. She began, her voice catching. Her eyes darted to the screen, to the numbers that no longer sang in harmony, but fractured into quiet chaos. I watched her carefully, the soft quiver of her lips, the fine tremor in her shoulders as she scrambled to find her footing. Her certainty wavered, her poise cracking like ice under pressure. I thought," she stammered, the words tumbling from her mouth in a breathless confusion. I rose slowly from my seat, each movement deliberate, the rustle of my skirt a soft punctuation in the gathering storm. My voice was even, cool, and clear as I spoke. "If I may," I said, the calm of my tone cutting through the hush like the first breath of winter. I turned to the screen, pointing with a steady hand to the data that lay exposed in its contradictions. "These figures are fabricated," I said, each word a precise blade. "The original data, which I prepared, tells a different story." A collective gasp rippled through the room. the weight of my words settling into the shocked silence. Ji-yeon's face went pale, her lips parting as if to protest, though the words never came. Her eyes met mine, wide and desperate, the mask she had worn for so long crumbling beneath the weight of my quiet truth. I didn't know," she whispered, her voice a thin thread of panic. I let my gaze meet hers, unflinching. "You thought you could wear my work like a crown," I said, my voice icy, unyielding. "Turns out, it's a noose." The silence in the room was absolute, the weight of the moment pressing down on every breath. The red folder slipped from her hands, landing on the table with a soft thud that sounded like a final note in a song she had never learned to sing. The board members' eyes flickered to me, then to her, the balance of power shifting in that small, silent pivot. I felt it in the air, a shift so subtle it was almost imperceptible. Yet it settled around me like a second skin. Jaeyeon's shoulders sagged, her fingers twisting in the loose edge of her blazer, her eyes pleading in the hush that followed. Her smile was gone, the practiced ease of her voice stripped away to reveal the hollow echo beneath. I turned away from her, my expression calm, the final words spoken not in triumph but in quiet certainty. The red folder lay between us, bright as a wound, a silent testament to the moment she had stolen from me, and the one I had reclaimed. As I sat down, the air still humming with the crackle of her unraveling, I felt the quiet promise of everything that would come next settle into my bones, and in the final flicker of the projector's light, I caught her gaze one last time, her eyes wide and lost. The last echo of my words still lingered in the charged silence of the boardroom. Ji-yeon's hands trembled as she gathered the papers she had dropped, her shoulders folding inward, as if the weight of her own deceit had finally become too much to bear. The red folder lay in the center of the table, bright and damning, a final testament to the web she had spun so carelessly. I could feel every breath in the room, the collective tension that hummed like a live wire between each heavy pause. The board members shifted in their seats, eyes flicking from Ji-yeon's bowed head to me, the once shadowed girl who now stood in quiet command of the moment. One of the partners cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the air like a blade. "Ji-yeon, how did this happen?" His voice was measured, though the sharp edge of disbelief laced every syllable. Ji-yeon looked up. Her lips parted in a silent gasp before she found her voice, thin and trembling. I trusted the data was real," she stammered, the words brittle as glass. Her eyes flickered to mine, a silent plea lost in the expanse of the room. My gaze held hers for a heartbeat, the memory of every soft smile and whispered promise she had offered me flickering like a dying flame. Then I turned my attention to the board, my voice calm and unwavering. "I have the real data," I said, each word deliberate and sure. I stepped forward, sliding a clean set of papers across the polished table, the soft rustle of the pages a quiet declaration of the truth. Cross-checked, verified, and accurate. And I have a new plan, one that will not only repair the damage done today, but set us on a path to sustainable growth. The silence that followed was no longer heavy with doubt. It was a space I had claimed, each second stretching out like the breath before a sunrise. I could see it in their faces, the slow shift of power, the way their postures straightened, attention sharpening in the dim light of the overhead fixtures. I watched Gi-yeon's face as the realization settled in, her mouth softening into a defeated line, her shoulders slumping, as if the air itself had turned cold against her skin. My heart did not waver at the sight of her unraveling. It was a quiet reckoning, not an act of cruelty. An investor seated at the far end of the table leaned forward, his dark eyes bright with interest. His tailored suit caught the light, the soft gleam of his watch glinting with each measured gesture. "You're prepared," he said, his tone calm and precise, confident. "Let's talk after this meeting." I inclined my head, a small smile ghosting across my lips. "I would be honored," I replied softly, the words tasting of victory and the quiet satisfaction that came with reclaiming what had always been mine. Jian's breath caught in her throat, her fingers twisting in the sleeve of her blazer as she looked down at the table. Her silence was louder than any apology could have been, the final echo of a power she no longer held. The investor's gaze lingered on me, a glimmer of amusement in the sharp line of his mouth. "I admire a woman who sees the truth clearly and doesn't flinch from it," he said, his voice low, almost intimate in the hush of the room. I met his eyes with a steady calm, though inside my pulse quickened, each beat a quiet promise that this was only the beginning. I don't need to steal. I build, and now I own the path forward. I began to outline my plan, my fingers brushing lightly over the pages as I spoke. My voice was soft, yet certain, each word laced with the quiet conviction I had honed in the long hours of night spent crafting strategies and refining ideas. I spoke of market growth and data-driven projections, of new opportunities that lay in the careful balance between innovation and integrity. The board listened in silence, the earlier skepticism in their eyes replaced by the measured curiosity of men and women who recognized strength when it stood before them. I felt their attention settle over me like a warm light, the quiet weight of it filling the space between each breath. Jian shifted in her seat, her eyes downcast as she clutched the red folder against her chest, a silent apology in every small, desperate gesture. She no longer tried to speak. The words she had once wielded like weapons lost in the bright, unwavering clarity of the truth. I kept my gaze steady, my tone unhurried as I answered questions, each one another step into the new role I had claimed. My posture was straight, every movement deliberate, a contrast to Juyan's small, defeated hunch, the weight of her choices etched into every line of her body. The light outside the tall windows shifted as the meeting wore on, the soft gold of morning turning to the pale clarity of afternoon. Shadows stretched across the table, long and elegant, a quiet reminder of the time that had passed and the future that lay waiting. When the final questions had been asked, and the last skeptical glances had turned to nods of agreement, I gathered my papers in a slow, deliberate motion. My hands were steady, the soft rustle of the pages a calm punctuation to the moment. The investor rose, his eyes never leaving mine. "We'll talk later," he said, his tone warm and decisive, his hand extended, fingers long and sure. I took it with a quiet smile, the contact brief but grounding, the weight of his interest a silent promise that echoed in the steady beat of my heart. Jitian remained seated, her hands clenched white around the folder, her breath shallow. She did not look at me as I passed her, though I could feel the quiet gravity of her regret in the space we shared. As I stepped into the hallway, the light was soft and clear, the quiet hush of the office like a balm against the last echoes of the meeting room's tension. I paused by the window, the city spread out below me in a tapestry of motion and light. My reflection in the glass was calm, the woman staring back at me no longer the girl who had once sat in silence as her work was stolen. I let my fingers brush the edge of the window, the cold of the glass a grounding touch as I let the weight of the moment settle over me. This is my path now, mine to build, mine to claim. Behind me, the door to the boardroom clicked shut, the quiet finality of it a soft, triumphant note in the stillness. My breath was slow and steady, each inhale a quiet promise that I would not waver. I turned from the window and walked down the hallway, my heels a measured rhythm against the polished floor. With each step, I felt the last threads of fear fall away, leaving behind only the quiet, resolute power of a woman who had found her place and would never let it be stolen again. The weight of the boardroom's final decision settled into the quiet spaces of the office, each corner steeped in the hush of something irrevocable. I walked down the hallway with measured calm, my footsteps a steady echo in the soft carpeted silence. The door to the executive suite stood open ahead of me, the brass plaque glinting under the cold winter light that streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, Jaeyun's uncle sat behind the massive oak desk, his face pale and drawn, the crisp lines of his tailored suit a fragile armor against the scandal that clung to every breath in the room. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cold air, the windows cracked open to let the bite of December chase away the suffocating weight of unspoken blame. I paused at the threshold, letting the silence gather around me like a cloak. My reflection in the glass door was calm, the woman who looked back at me composed and resolute. I had become the quiet center of a storm that had once threatened to swallow me whole. He lifted his head slowly, the lines around his eyes deepened by exhaustion. "Seijin," he said, his voice quiet, each word measured with the care of a man who had learned the cost of every promise he had failed to keep. I inclined my head, my posture straight, the soft light catching the subtle sheen of my dark suit. "Sir," I murmured, my tone polite, though there was no softness in the calm I wore like armor. He let out a slow breath, his shoulders sinking as he folded his hands on the polished wood of the desk. "I'm stepping down," he said finally, the words tasting of defeat and reluctant relief. "I've failed this company." His gaze shifted past me to the city beyond the window, the skyline a blur of steel and frost. "I thought I could protect her," he continued, his voice a quiet confession that filled the room like the last chord of a long-forgotten song. "I thought if I gave her everything, she would learn the weight of what she was given." My fingers rested lightly on the edge of the doorframe, the cold metal grounding against my skin. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us, each second another reminder of the choices that had brought us here. He looked back at me then, his eyes dark and resigned. "Take care of what I couldn't," he said, his voice a whisper of an apology he did not know how to offer. "Make sure this company becomes something worth believing in again." I nodded once, the gesture small and solemn. "I will," I said, each syllable a promise I would keep. My breath was slow and steady, the final note in a symphony of quiet triumph. The reporters waited in the lobby, their voices a low murmur of curiosity and suspicion that filled the space like the hiss of winter wind against glass. Ji-yeon stood near the entrance, her posture small and closed in the midst of the shifting crowd. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her red lipstick a vivid slash against the pale of her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed, the soft line of her mouth pressed tight as if to hold back the last words she would ever speak with confidence. She looked up as I approached, her gaze catching mine with a flicker of something that tasted of regret and desperate dignity. Her hands were clasped in front of her, the white of her knuckles a silent testament to the effort it took to keep standing. She began, her voice catching in her throat, though she forced it back into shape. "I'll accept the assistant position," she said, the words bitter and cracked around the edges. "Please, Sejin, let me stay." I studied her face, the soft sheen of desperation in her eyes that had once been bright with easy charm. She had played her part so well for so long, every smile a practiced performance that left no space for truth. Now, there was only the small, quiet ruin of the woman she had built in place of herself. My expression did not waver, though I let a flicker of something close to pity soften my eyes. "You'll learn what real work is," I said calmly, each word shaped by the quiet certainty that had carried me this far. "I hope, someday, you'll understand why this had to happen." Her breath caught, her lips parting as if to speak, though the words never came. She bowed her head, the line of her shoulders collapsing in a final, silent admission of defeat. The red folder was gone, replaced by the small, colorless clutch she held in both hands, as if the absence of that bright mark had left her unmoored. I walked past her without hesitation, the soft click of my heels a metronome in the hush of the lobby. My reflection in the glass doors shimmered briefly in the winter light, each step carrying me further from the quiet shadows I had once lived in. The empty chair in the CEO's office was waiting, a silent sentinel to everything that had been lost and won in the cold spaces of these halls. I felt the weight of that seat as I approached it. The curve of the leather a promise of power that I had earned, with every quiet hour of calculation and every moment of silence that had once felt like a cage. I paused at the threshold, letting my fingers brush the back of the chair. The room smelled of fresh polish and the faint lingering ghost of Ji-yeon's uncle's cologne. My breath was calm, my gaze steady as I sank into the seat that had once seemed so far beyond my reach. The city outside the window shimmered under the pale sun, each gleaming building a testament to the weight of ambition and the quiet strength of those who refused to be erased. Ji-yeon lingered in the doorway, her head bowed, shoulders small and fragile against the wide expanse of glass and steel. She did not speak, though I could feel the silent apology in the way her fingers tightened around the edge of her clutch. I let the silence stretch, each moment another quiet echo of the choices that had led us both here. My voice was soft when I finally spoke, though there was no softness in the finality of it. "You're dismissed." "Jiyoung," I said, each word a clean cut of truth in the stillness. She nodded once, her lips trembling around the small, breathless exhale that tasted of surrender. She turned and walked away, her footfalls light and unsteady, the bright echo of her laughter forever gone from these halls. I watched her go, my expression calm and unflinching. The weight of the chair beneath me was a promise I would not break, each breath a reminder that this seat was mine, not taken, not borrowed, but earned. As the door closed behind her, the quiet of the office settled around me like the last breath of winter. The city spread out beneath me, its lights bright and unending, the future waiting in the soft hush of a new beginning. I let my eyes close for a moment, the weight of my own calm, a quiet benediction in the hush of the empty room. This is where I begin. I sink into the black leather chair behind the mahogany desk, the wood cool beneath my fingertips. The CEO office pulses with early morning quiet, the dawn light slipping through floor-to-ceiling windows like a silent promise. My gaze drifts to the city skyline, each steel tower caught in the gentle glow of sunrise, their reflections dancing on glass facades. This panorama is no longer a distant dream, it's my reality, hard-won through solitude, strategy, and truth. The air feels different here today, more expansive. My breath eases, the tension I carried for months dissolving into this stillness. The office is stripped of silent schemes, betrayal, and stolen ideas. Everything that weighed on me has been brought into light. And I stand at the center, not broken, but whole. Footsteps approach softly. They belong to Jiyeon. Her figure appears in the doorway, fragile in the soft glow, dressed in the company's standard blouse and skirt, her posture respectful. Her red lips, once bold and dangerous, are pale, subdued. She carries a tray with 2 cups of coffee. My name is barely an echo as she places 1 cup before me. "Your coffee, Se-yen," she says, voice so quiet it shimmers. I lift the mug with deliberate calm, inhaling the rich aroma that feels like a final chord in this symphony. I meet her gaze, noting how her eyes trace the curve of my jaw, steady, unflinching. In that moment, there's no rancor between us, only acknowledgement of everything we've lost and gained. "Thank you," I say softly. Voice warm but contained, I tilt the mug to sip. The taste is familiar comfort, but also a testament to our work now settled on honest foundations. Her hand hesitates on the tray's edge. I watch the flutter in her chest, the faint tilt of her shoulders. She remains silent, curtsying her head in a gesture of acceptance. Then she turns and exits, the office door closing behind her with a saberous soft ring. She leaves more than the scent of coffee behind. She leaves quiet closure. Light shifts as I rise, moving toward the window and the skyline beyond. The city breathes beneath me, each building a monument, not to ambition for its own sake, but to endurance, transformation, and purpose. I stand tall, my silhouette strong in glass. This is my rebirth, not through death or fantasy, but through the quiet power of refusing to be erased. My voice is internal, steady as steel, tempered by design. Years of stolen words, of hidden recordings and midnight calculations led me to this moment. My power lies not in vengeance, but in vision. Memory drifts briefly, late-night emails, whispered meetings, Ji-yeon's diverted gaze when she stole my slides, her unraveling in that boardroom, the red folder collapsing under the weight of truth. Each flash a reminder that I claimed my worth through integrity and patience, not brute force. Turning back to the desk, I set my coffee down and open a new document titled Q2 Growth Strategy. No red folder needed here, only clarity, accuracy, and ambition. I begin typing, each word a brick in the foundation of something real. The office door clicks softly behind me. Ji-yeon enters again, this time empty-handed, her expression unreadable. She pauses. She starts, voice low. I look up, curious, though my chest is calm. She steps forward and places a printed document beside the keyboard, her own concise memo, wrapped in humble apology and genuine insight. The gesture surprises me, touches the remnants of empathy still alive. I read the memo. Observations on team morale, realistic timeline adjustments, acknowledgments of past mistakes. Her handwriting is neat, earnest. I meet her eyes. Thank you for this, I say, voice quiet but true. She bows her head, tear-damp eyelashes catching the light. I accept the position wholeheartedly, she whispers. I will work to earn your trust. The echo in the room is soft and profound. Everything has shifted. No lies, no games, only honest labor. I nod, and for the first time I offer more than tolerance. Your role isn't to hide behind others' work. If you'd like to help shape the company honestly, I'd welcome it. She lifts her head, hope glimmering. The corners of her lips tremble into a small, grateful smile, a fragile bud in winter. I return to the window, gesturing toward the city. Our future is ours to build, I say. Each word carries possibility, not through shortcuts, but through what we create and how we carry ourselves. She joins me at the glass, shoulders aligned. The early light paints her hair gold along the edges. No longer rival, but colleague, guided by truth. The city hums beneath our feet as I savor the finality of this moment. This company will grow under honest stewardship. I will guide it with vision tempered by empathy and strength honed in the crucible of betrayal. The door closes again, and the two of us stand together, CEO and assistant, united by hard truth and purpose. There's no lingering bitterness, only quiet resolve and the promise of work to come. I breathe in the weight of the leadership seat behind me, warmed by morning's glow. My reign begins here, quiet, resolute, and built on a foundation that will never be stolen again. In the soft hush of dawn, I lift my coffee once more. To new beginnings, I whisper, voice firm and hopeful. The skyline shimmers in agreement. In the hush of your resolve lies a strength no spotlight can diminish. Have you ever turned someone's theft into your stepping stone? Or built something no one else could because you stayed the course in silence? Share your story below. Let's celebrate those who rise without applause, who build legacies from the quiet strength of their own vision. Subscribe for more tales that honor the dignity of patience, the art of subtle victory, and the brilliance of those who will not be erased.